food for beings who can't make their own gland bliss. And it's like the Saint Germain story is, if you become addicted to the gold powder, you can make a technologically immortal astral body, but oops, you're stuck. You can't get beyond that astral body. So there you are wandering about in the ether of some of these ascended master stories. And all you can do is set up astral milk houses, which unfortunately has a little bit to do with the Elizabeth Clare Prophet story, and all these astral milk houses, because these quote-unquote masters, Ashtar, for example, that whole lineage, can't get enough juice to go through the membrane, through the speed of light. And so what do? They have to eat, they create fear to make this lovely little juice they eat. So we have been teaching these principles that implosion, this raising of the Jed Tower, this creating of the body polis, the pole, the political, the polarizing of the magnetic field in the aura, or to make this implosive fire in the body, is the only thing that can really fabricate a membrane that can penetrate, can go through the speed of light. And for the same reason then that a vampire cannot be in sunlight, parasitism cannot happen in the presence of an imploding heart. The imploding heart begins the moment you feel the agony of separateness, which can only happen if you're allowed to feel separate, which cannot happen in a Borg telepathy. When you feel the agony of separateness, then you can choose to turn your electrical center self, your heart, inside out. In the beginning of that turning inside out ness, when it goes to completion, squirts a bigger worm inside a bigger worm inside a bigger worm, right in the electrical field donuts which cause the heart to fire. And that electrical implosion of where the heart is fired in the fractal branching self-similar algorithm of the fibers of Purkinje, where your heart catches electricity in the perfect scalar quote-unquote free energy device, teaches us the real origin of fusion energy. If the heart's on fire, that is the mechanism which makes all immune systems. The thymus is a catcher's mitt for those sonics, uses the harmonic tinker toys to fabricate the immune system. The thymus does not shrink if there's bliss, and bliss fuses the implosion in the heart, and that fuses the harmonic series of the sonic ponytail of the EKG, which braids the DNA to the point of implosion, which gives the worm an eyeball to squirt through the speed of light into time. So all of these sort of happily ever after motifs about if you are following your bliss, then there will be fire in your eye, there will be a twinkling eyes lifestyle, you will be nourished by spin, there will be high frequencies in your membrane, so there will be resolution and therefore twinkle in your eyeball's membrane, and then you can answer the devil that says, I'm going to take your soul. And your answer can be, I know who you are the twinkle in my eye, and which is your way of saying, there is nothing that is not myself. I can inhabit and embed in everything. And in so doing, you become the magnetic field that can consume all perspectives. And that starts this squirt gun that happens at the moment of new compassion, when stars quiver because the new gravity is born. And this starts the pump that creates the amygdalic serpent mouth juices that comes down the Kundalini pathway and completes the eye tooth, which evolves, that makes the dragon able to peck its way through the egg, the membrane, the Nibiru Ninhursag's egg shell, and suddenly we collectively are the bullet in the furnace. The story is that these angel families, call them Ophanim and Seraphim if you will, the angel families who initiated this experiment realized that new leverage genetically was needed on spin, on black holes, on starlight. A new way to squirt yourself into a black hole using the right tilt angles. The index to those tilt angles is the star alphabets, a superset of Hebrew. Hebrew is just the shadows of a tetrahedron. In a tetrahelix, you get no implosion in DNA. the Nibiru Hebrew priests could only make an unensouled golem because they hadn't found the way to peck their way through the membrane. So they're stuck now. They deposited their dragon's egg here, Ninursag's egg, Cro-Magnon sperm. They stuck the egg here, and then they had to stand back and wait for the pearl. The pearl was the fact that the Kundalingam, this calcific excipient that comes out the mouth of the dragon's brain, the amygdala, only happens when the bliss juice pumping goes to completion, which in sacrocranial pulse literature, Upledger is described as, well, if the sacrocranial pump is working, then you clinically cannot be depressed. So you have this mechanism of creating the harvest of spin of the ultraviolet blue fire sex juices, the tantra and kundalini of the body, into this serpent worm, which is the happily ever after, creating this possibility of the pearl. And the reason they needed the pearl was because their gene pool was going to be toast in the face of the sun's fire, the way a vampire is toast in front of the sun's fire. And so they must stand back and wait for the discovery of this pearl. The mechanism of the pearl is the pure principle behind all religion, which is simply the pure principle of the hygiene that makes sharing and therefore bliss, because bliss is a name for charge so well shared that it converges. So religions were a name for the hygiene to make the bliss possible, which could converge the charge necessary, and that was the pure principle for how to create the solution to the dragon's egg to make the pearl. And that's, I guess what they would say is, did you take the blue pill or did you take the red pill? That's the pill. That's the way out of the matrix. It's literally this. It is, here is the ultraviolet juices at your tailbone. You did the pelvic tilt, you switched your organ kunda buffer, you got the 32-degree tilt angle complement of the chin angle of the sphinx, tilting the cube into the dodecahedron, completing the implosion of the tetrahedral fire breath, and the long wave sonic up the spine completes this circuit of the juices where the dragon, the Scorpio, stings itself, eats the juices of its own tailbone, and that juice goes through us, comes out here, and you get this eyeball at the top of the worm, which is like the picture of this serpent over the Buddha at the moment of enlightenment. And that's the eye tooth. I'd give my eye tooth if we could understand that. That's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Okay, that is the eye tooth which pecks the way through the egg and is the solution to the heart of the matrix. Thank you very much. And there's one other piece of this interesting little puzzle of the matrix that we should look at in parallel to the way out of the matrix, and that is the matrix established by the solar calendar. The example is the Mayan notion of the solar calendar, as Jose Argüelles has been describing it, where the centerpiece of that matrix of the pattern of the solar magnetics, the solar flare periodicities, creates this hexagram, 64 codons of the DNA.